Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Giamicello. I'm on the board of the Greenmount Audubon Society, and I will be serving as your master of ceremonies this evening for our presentation. On behalf of the program committee, I am very pleased to give you some background about our presenter tonight, Julia Pupko. She currently is serving at Vermont Center for Ecostudies as through the Eco AmeriCorps. She is a graduate of the University of Vermont in wildlife biology, graduating in 2019. And she might not tell you this, but previous to your arrival, she took one of her 3 birds and said that she had to make sure they were being quiet. So she put them a little bit out of our range. So she is a nature lover. She spent hours exploring the forest around her family's home, learning about plant medicine from her mother. And tonight she's going to give us a really interesting presentation. I know very little about this subject, so I'm quite interested in learning. Invasions, extirpations, and discoveries. Without any further ado, I'm going to introduce to you Julia Pupko. Okay, Julia Pupko, let's fly away.
Thank you for that. All right, so just briefly before I begin, I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that the Vermont Center for Ecostudies is located in southern Vermont, which is Abenaki land. I wanted to begin by asking what you all think of when you think of a ladybug.
And excuse me, Julia, I need to pop in 1 second. For all those of you, if you have questions, please type them into the chat. Julia has indicated that she will be taking questions at the end of her presentation, and I will be moderating them. Sorry, away we go.
No worries. I was actually just about to say that. Yes, so if you think of a ladybug as also known as a lady beetle, as a small round beetle around the size or length of the diameter of a dime, that has red wing covers covered in black spots, much like the image on the screen, you are not alone. Many people have this image come to mind as the classic lady beetle when they think of ladybugs. And this is actually the Asian lady beetle, which is a non-native species in Vermont and across North America. And in Vermont, we have many different lady beetle species, which, as you can see on the screen, have a wide variety of appearances. They also come in many different shapes and sizes. Some of them are very round, some of them are very long, some are only 1 millimeter in length, whereas others can be up to 10 millimeters in length. Additionally, you can find lady beetles as little clusters of eggs before they hatch. In their larval form, this is the twice-stabbed lady beetle, and this is an Asian lady beetle larva. They kind of look like little alligators, in my opinion, or as a pupa. Despite all of their differences in appearance, lady beetles play a very important role basically everywhere they are found, which is many different places. You can find lady beetles in essentially every different terrestrial ecosystem in North America, from forests to grasslands to farmlands, even in marshes and at the tops of mountains. In North America, we have around 475 different species of lady beetle. And all of these lady beetles, aside from a couple genuses that directly feed on plants, play a very important role as biological control agents for aphids, mealybugs, scale insects, and other small soft-bodied insects. Without our native lady beetle species, these small soft-bodied insects, which feed directly on plants, may become so numerous that they begin to damage the plants they feed on, which would have implications both for our agricultural crops as well as for other plant species in our terrestrial habitats. Additionally, some of our native lady beetle species have very quickly adapted to introduce pests, such as the scale component of beech bark disease, helping to control those introduced pests as well. Finally, lady beetles are a very common and recognizable invertebrate group, which are sensitive to environmental conditions, so they have been proposed as an indicator species group. Sadly, across North America, many of our native lady beetle species have been in decline. These declines are thought to be caused by a combination of factors, including the introduction of non-native lady beetles, such as that Asian lady beetle that you saw on the first slide, introduced diseases with those lady beetles, land use change, and pesticide use. Of these factors, I want you to keep both land use change, which that is largely contributed to the fall of small farms and conversion of a lot of open space to urban centers, and the introduction of non-native lady beetle species. Many introduced lady beetle species grow faster than our native species, and lady beetles are actually cannibalistic. This is something that's common across basically every lady beetle species, which means that the non-native lady beetles, as they are introduced and become established in North America, have added an additional pressure on our native species because they grow faster and then will consume native lady beetle eggs and larvae. Additionally, they compete with our native species for food and for habitat, all of which contributes to pressure on our native species. This leads us to Vermont. How are our native lady beetles doing here? Lady beetles were actually not on the VAL or Vermont Center for Ecostudies, which is a subgroup within the, incorrect. VAL or Vermont Atlas of Life, which is a subgroup within the Vermont Center for Ecostudies. There we go. Was not on our radar until 2018. In 2018, we received this historic document, which you can see on the screen, which is a checklist of lady beetles found prior to and during a survey that was completed in 1976. As we were digitizing this record, we noticed that first, we had very few digital records of lady beetles, and second, many of the species that were listed in this document had not been recorded since the completion of the checklist. As a result, keeping in mind these national trends of decline, we began gathering other data to see if we could kind of fill in those gaps in the roughly 40 years between us digitizing this document and its creation. We gathered records from the Cornell University's Lost Ladybug Project and digitized collections from the University of Vermont, Middlebury, Vermont Forest Parks and Recreation, and most recently, the Fairbanks Museum, along with gathering all of the research grade observations from the Vermont Atlas of Life on iNaturalist, which I will talk about a little bit more soon. At this point, we had around 2,000 records and we're at the end of our data. But from these records, we determined that there are 35 native and 7 introduced species of lady beetle in the state of Vermont, at least that we know of thus far. There may be more that haven't been recorded. And as of 2019, even after digitizing all of those records and collections, 13 of our native species were still missing since that completion of the checklist. Other species seem to be following those national trends of decline. And to show you a visual representation of what our data looks like, you can see here, this is the number of lady beetle species. An important note is the reason why this does not reflect the 42 total species that we have is that many of our invasive species that are now found in Vermont were established after 1980, including the 7-spotted lady beetle, variegated lady beetle, Asian lady beetle, and the 14-spotted lady beetle. So even though we can't say definitively due to lack of records, it is very suspicious that these drops in the number of native species recorded occurred around the same time as those non-native lady beetle species were becoming established in the state. You can see here, this is due to our work, which is the start of the Vermont Lady Beetle Atlas. So in 2020, we piloted this atlas with the goal of surveying the state of Vermont, looking for lady beetles to determine what beetle species are still in Vermont, specifically looking for those missing species, and also get a better idea as to whether the species that appear to be in decline are actually in decline, or if it's just due to lack of data. From the data that we are planning on gathering with the completion of this survey, it's projected to take 5 years in total, including 2020, we hope to better inform conservation measures that may need to be taken to address either missing species or declines, which may include the reintroduction of some native species, figuring out if there's a way to combat non-native species, and then maybe legislative things that need to be done as well, such as listing species if they seem to be endangered in the state. To complete the Vermont Lady Beetle Atlas, we are calling on community naturalists across the state of Vermont. Hopefully this will include all of you as well, to go outside and look for lady beetles. Basically, that is kind of what community science is in this context. And the reason why we are using this framework, collecting data from all of our incredible volunteers, is because you are all very powerful data collectors. So tapping into community volunteers has multiple benefits. It increases community engagement with research, raises awareness for conservation, reduce research costs, and really increases the chances of finding lady beetles. We are following a framework that has been used by other Vermont Atlas of Life projects and has also been used in other lady beetle projects. So the Cornell Lost Ladybug Project utilized contributions from community naturalists across North America, and this led to the discovery of, well, many lady beetles, but in New York, 2-spotted and 9-spotted lady beetle populations, and they were previously thought to be extirpated or extinct in the state of New York before community volunteers found them. And you can see this is the number of lady beetles recorded over time. You have that spike where that 1976 checklist was completed. And then you have the Vermont Atlas of Life on iNaturalist starting in 2012, which led to this exponential increase. However, the most important part of this, in my opinion, is this huge spike between 2019 and 2020. This is where we piloted our Vermont Lady Beetle Atlas. And you can see that there was just this incredible spike in lady beetle records that we now have. So you may be wondering, oh, I clicked early. You may be wondering how we are collecting all of these contributions and how you may be able to contribute to this project. We are using iNaturalist, which for those of you who may have not used iNaturalist before, it is an entirely free platform that connects people with science and connects community naturalists with each other. iNaturalist is a really cool platform because basically the unit of it is called an observation, which is one interaction that a person has with a wild organism, may that be plant, animal, fungus, insect, etc., at one time in one place. So basically you could take pictures of a tree in your backyard in winter and upload those as an observation. And then later when the tree starts budding out in the spring, you could take more photos of it to note the day when the buds break open and upload those to iNaturalist as well, then link your observations so you can kind of trace through your interactions with these organisms, how they are changing over time. Another really powerful feature of iNaturalist is that one of the purposes of it is for community naturalists to help each other with identification. Basically, what this means is when you first upload an observation, your observation will have this little flag at the top that says needs ID. And then other community naturalists will come across it and either confirm your identification or suggest a new identification if you didn't know what it was or misidentified it. Once enough people agree on the identity of the organism, it becomes research grade. And from there, it can get pulled into other databases or pulled directly off of iNaturalist by researchers to help with the mapping and distribution and other research projects surrounding that organism or taxonomic group. So at this point, I'm going to share a new screen and pull up iNaturalist. So I can show you all a few of the features within this. There we go. Within the platform. So the first thing that I wanted to point out quickly with iNaturalist is you can go to the Explore page and either search for a specific species or larger taxonomic group, and then filter it by location or by any of these other options that you have in here, and then curate that group of organisms within that region to look through. For example, this is giving you a map of the state of Vermont and all of the lady beetle observations that have occurred here. When you zoom in more, you see that each observation is represented by a teardrop on the map, which is where this observation occurred. You can then click on the observation to find out more information. One thing that's important to note here is if you desire, you are able to obscure your location, so only you and trusted users can see exactly where the observation was taken. Once you are in the observation page, you can see this one has been, the identity has been confirmed by another user, so it's now research grade. You have the photo. If there were more photos of this lady beetle, you could scroll through the photos. You can see annotations, so live or dead, life stage, etc. And any user can fill these in, which just adds additional data to the observation. And then you have a bunch of other information down here that you are able to scroll through. Another really powerful feature of iNaturalist is either by searching for a taxonomic group or species, or just by clicking the name of the species that you are already on for that observation, if iNaturalist will load, you get taken to the taxonomic page. From here, you are able to see a map of where this species has been observed across the world. And if you wanted to, you'd be able to filter by place, which would then change the map and the information in this little graph here to the locale that you have selected. You also have an about page, which links to Wikipedia. As you can see, there's not very much information here because there is no page on Wikipedia for the three-banded lady beetle. So sometimes you get a lot of information, sometimes you don't get as much, but you can see that there are more info tabs here. You also have a taxonomy page and status, which this one does not have a status. And then I don't know I guess this species hasn't been misidentified, so I'm going to go to another lady beetle species, but usually you have another tab here that says similar species, which allows you to look for look at other species that iNaturalist users have commonly misidentified. Here we go. And I find this tab to be really helpful if you are first learning how to identify species within a taxonomic group or just differentiate taxonomic groups from each other, because you're able to click around in here and start to learn how to tell them apart. Very briefly, this is the iNaturalist Identify tab. You can see that it has these filters up here at the top, similar to the Explore tab. And basically what you do is you just either, again, curate taxonomic groups or species that you know how to identify, and then again can filter by place, etc. And once you have an observation that you want to review, you can click on it, and you can either agree with the identification that the person has suggested. Even though this is not a species, I can still agree with this. Or if you know what this is, you can add an identification or suggest a new one. If, say, this was actually a tree and not a fungus, I could add an ID here. In this way, even though this is a larger kingdom instead of a species group, anyone who searches in the Identify tab for fungi, this will pop up, and then they will better be able to help the person with identification. The final thing that I'm going to show you super quickly in iNaturalist is how to upload photos. You simply select Choose Files, navigate to Pictures on your computer, and then you single click the first photo you want to upload, hold down Shift on your keyboard, click the last one you want to upload, and click Open. And each photo you have uploaded is on its own individual, I call these plates. Since you don't want to have an individual observation for each photo of the same individual, what you want to do is combine these. So again, just hold down Shift on your keyboard, single click each photo that's of the same individual, and then just click Combine at the top. And you can see that now it says 1 of 4 here, and I can click through these 4 photos that are now in one observation the way I want it. You can also click Select All at the top to highlight all of the photos that you have uploaded, allowing you to edit multiple species, dates, locations, and all of this other information at the same time, which is really helpful. Also, as you can see, well, for some reason, iNaturalist always thinks that this 14-spotted lady beetle photo is a spot croaker. I don't know why, but as you can see, it does have artificial intelligence. So when you go to fill in a name, you see that bumblebees popped up. And for some like bird species and photos of animals that are very commonly uploaded, it is usually pretty accurate in terms of its identification suggestion. Once you're done adding in all the information that you want, you would simply click Submit, and they would go to your iNaturalist page. All right, let me reshare my presentation. There we go. So last thing of note with iNaturalist is you do have all of this information available on a mobile app as well. So you can see you have your Explore page, activity from people commenting and suggesting identifications on your observations, and then also any identifications that you contributed as well. You have a list of the observations you've uploaded. And then to upload, you have a little Observe tab right here. And then you can either take photos or select photos from your camera roll. and then just go about the same process that you do in the web version to upload those observations. So to connect iNaturalist back to the Vermont Lady Beetle Atlas, we have a project on iNaturalist for the Lady Beetle Atlas, and are really suggesting that anyone who's involved downloads iNaturalist and then uploads their Lady Beetle, photos of their Lady Beetle encounters directly to iNaturalist. And through doing this past year, we saw an increase of 234 iNaturalist users contributing Lady Beetle data to iNaturalist for the first time in the state of Vermont. We saw of the roughly 1,700 research grade Lady Beetle observations on iNaturalist, 914 of those were made in 2020 alone, which was 54% of our research grade Lady Beetle iNaturalist observations. And now we only have 12 missing native species. So again, just to kind of reiterate the power of using iNaturalist and engaging with community members, you can see the difference between Vermont, which has the Vermont Atlas of Life and is using iNaturalist to really curate all of this data, versus New Hampshire, which does not have an organization pushing Lady Beetle research or an iNaturalist project for this. You can see the difference in these numbers. But one thing of note is that in both states, Asian lady beetles are by far the most commonly observed species. So that is definitely alarming. This graphic shows different lady beetle species. This is only in the state of Vermont in 2020 by the number of them observed and uploaded to iNaturalist, and it is wild how many more Asian lady beetles were observed than literally any other species. You can also see these hashed bars here are invasive versus the solid black bars are native. You can see of the top 6 most frequently observed species, how many of those were invasive. Additionally, community scientists have rediscovered 4 lady beetle species that were lost for over 40 years, including the 4-spotted spur-leg lady beetle, which you can see right here in this photo, the convergent lady beetle, undulate sigil lady beetle, and the hieroglyphic lady beetle. Our community volunteers have also found 3 new lady beetle species, all of which are native, which have never been recorded in the state of Vermont prior to them finding them. These include the undoubtable lady beetle, mountain lady beetle, and Octavia lady beetle, which you can see right here on the screen. So our next steps going into this field season are to increase community volunteer participation in the Vermont Lady Beetle Atlas. And there are 3 primary ways in which you can do this, all of which, again, we encourage you to download iNaturalist. However, if it is easier for you to take a bunch of photos and then have very accurate data with those photos as to the location of the lady beetle find, the date and the time, and then any other information you wish to include, that is also fine. You can email that to us, but we really want to encourage people to use iNaturalist if possible. So if you just are walking your dog or gardening or outside or inside, I suppose, and find a lady beetle, you can simply take some photos of the lady beetle and upload those to iNaturalist. That would be the incidental sighting way of participating. You can also actively search for lady beetles. And you can do this in a couple different ways. First, you can simply go outside and visually search vegetation for lady beetles. Since lady beetles are found basically anywhere, what you can do is just look at the trunks of trees or of shrubs, and then also check what I would consider to be juicy vegetation. So think like clover or vegetables in your garden or other plants that you may have encountered having aphids on before. Searching those for lady beetles is a good way to do it. And then another way you can actively search is called sweep netting. So basically what you would do in this scenario is either buy an insect net or you can make your own. We have information on our Vermont Atlas of Life page for the Vermont Lady Beetle Atlas, which I'll put in the chat once I'm done presenting, on how you can do that. And basically what you do with the net is you just walk around outside and whack vegetation with it. You can do that with low-hanging tree branches, with shrubs, with like vegetation in fields. And after sweeping and like whacking some vegetation with the net for however long you feel is good, what you do is stop, close the net, and then slowly peel the net open. And as you do that, you want to have some clear either vials or containers with you so you can scoop lady beetles or any other insect of interest out of the net into the container and then take photos of that individual to upload to iNaturalist. I would recommend, if you are going to bring vials and try and like capture the lady beetles for a little bit, to photograph them. First of all, I recommend doing that because they fly away really quickly. If you just open the net, they'll just all fly out in your face. But I do recommend bringing a lunchbox or a small bag with an ice pack in it, so you can just pop the lady beetles on ice for a couple minutes. It doesn't harm them, it just slows them down. Otherwise, they'll just zoom in circles around the container you have them in, which makes them very difficult to photograph. The final way that you can participate is by adopting a survey priority block. And how you would do this is navigating to our Vermont Lady Beetle Atlas website, and then it's like a tab on the left-hand side of the page that says survey blocks. Once you scroll down to the blocks, there's a bunch of information on everything I'm about to say, but essentially you will select one of the highlighted blocks. We encourage you to select one of these orange blocks first, if possible. If not, that's okay. You can select one of the yellow ones as well. And what you will do is you can download a topographic map of the block. And then we just ask that you go out and try to complete at least one survey in each different habitat within that block over the course of the summer. And basically how we selected which blocks would be our lady beetle blocks was that we gridded out the state of Vermont using the US Geological Survey topographic maps. There's 184 of those. We divided those into these grid blocks that you can see here. So there's 6 of these blocks, each is roughly 3 by 3 miles within one topographic map. And then we selected a representative number of these blocks from each of these biophysical regions, which you can see highlighted in red across the state. So we would get a representative sample of the different ecosystem types in Vermont. One thing when you're out looking for lady beetles, no matter what your participation level of choice is, we encourage that you really think about your photo quality when you are taking photos to upload to iNaturalist. First, you want to try and get photos of different angles of these beetles. So you can see here with this 20-spotted lady beetle, I have a photo of the bottom of the beetle, I have a photo of the top of the beetle, and then I have a photo of the beetle's head and pronotum, which is this middle section right here. And this is important because many of our native species can only be distinguished from each other using very small differences in their patterns on one spot or another of the beetle. So if you don't get all those angles, it can be really difficult to tell them apart. Additionally, if possible, it's good to have a size reference by them, even if it's a reference on your own body. So say I have a bit of a freckle on my finger there. Later, I measure my finger and I know that this distance is 7 millimeters. I can say the beetle was approximately 5.5 millimeters long or something like that, or bring a ruler with you, which again, cooling the beetles for a little bit would help with. Because some of our native species, it's the size differentiation that helps you tell which species it is. Additionally, to get your iNaturalist observation to become research grade, it's important that you have accurate time, date, and location information. Even if you obscure your location, that's okay, as long as it's accurate. To close out tonight, I am going to briefly talk about some of our native species and why I find them to be so incredible. To begin, we have the eye-spotted lady beetle. This lady beetle is arboreal and is very closely associated with conifer trees. It grows to be between 7.3 and 10 millimeters in length. Additionally, the eye-spotted lady beetle is a very important predator of the balsam twig aphid. Through some different research that's been conducted on the eye-spotted lady beetle, it has been found that they synchronize their life cycles with balsam twig aphids so they can prey on them the most effectively. Additionally, eye-spotted lady beetles will very actively hunt balsam twig aphids, whereas other non-native species, in this case it was the Asian lady beetle, would not actively hunt balsam twig aphids and would only opportunistically prey on them, which means that it would only eat balsam twig aphids if it happened to essentially run into one, instead of eye-spotted lady beetles, which have like hunting techniques, such as digging their heads into new growth on the end of balsam firs to dig the aphids out. Additionally, a different study found that eye-spotted lady beetles were able to reduce overwintering balsam twig aphid egg masses by 30% and completely destroyed aphid colonies once they were located. Another species of note is the convergent lady beetle. These species grow to be 7 millimeters in length and are habitat generalists, so they can be found essentially anywhere. However, they have a preference for agricultural crops and fields and play a very, very important role in agricultural pest control. However, convergent lady beetles are one of the species that are very strongly in decline. They used to be one of the most commonly found lady beetles in North America. And now in the state of Vermont, for example, we only have a handful of records of convergent lady beetles over the last couple of decades. So this is definitely a good species to keep your eyes out for, because we want to know, if there are more of them in the state, or if they are truly as in as steep of a decline in the state of Vermont as they seem to be. Another fun fact about convergent lady beetles is that you can actually purchase them for release in your garden or agricultural crops. The final species I'm going to talk about tonight is the marsh lady beetle. This species, as the name implies, can be found in wetlands, marshes, bogs, and can also be found in really wet forests. They only grow to be 4 millimeters in length, and like the convergent lady beetle, are rather long, elongate in their form. Other than the fact that they are known to prey on aphids and scale insects like many other lady beetle species, there's very little known about them. So this would be another really good species to kind of keep your eyes out for, because hopefully with collecting data on them, we can also learn a little bit more about them. So I am looking forward to all of your questions, but I really appreciate all of you listening to my presentation, and hope that you will join us, because this is it's really important that we better understand how lady beetles are doing in Vermont. And also, if you're tuning in from somewhere outside of Vermont, lady beetles matter where you live as well. So just having a better idea how these incredibly important yet understudied species are doing is awesome. So then we can better inform conservation, legislative changes, etc., that may be needed to best support these species.
Thank you very much. We do have some questions for you. So our first question is, are even the males called lady beetles?
Yes, they are.
Can you
I
elaborate?
don't know. I don't know why, but both, well, okay, I do know why they were originally called lady birds and then lady bugs. So basically, lady beetles are found across the world, and as legend has it, in a village in England, there's a really, really bad aphid problem one year. And everyone was praying and praying and really hoping that something would come to save their crops. Then a bunch of lady beetles appeared. So they named them ladybirds after the Virgin Mary. And then in North America, ladybird became ladybug. And then entomologists were like, we don't like the term bug. So some people, such as myself, call them lady beetles.
The next one is a question that I've always wondered about, and that is, Julia, why do I most often see lady beetles inside my house or near the window?
Yes, so those are most likely Asian lady beetles. And that is because Asian lady beetles have become very accustomed to people. This is a theory on my part, but I think that's why they're such an effective invasive species, because they have adapted to humans and can frequently be found in urban areas. So in the winter, when it's getting cold outside, they will move into people's houses so they stay warm over the course of the winter. And that is why they move inside. As to the window part, I feel like they probably don't enter dipause when they're inside because it's warm inside, as they would if they were outside where it would get colder. But I'm sure that they move towards the windows as like a, wait, we want to get back outside and are not sure how to do that move. But that part of it is just speculation on my part.
We have another, this is a pretty technical question from a viewer. 7 millimeters seems huge for the convergent lady beetle. Do you have a comparison on size versus the Asian lady beetle?
Yeah, so the Asian lady beetle, they also can be, there's like usually a range for lady beetles. I'm not sure what the smaller end of the Asian lady beetle is, but that one can get to be around 10 millimeters in length, which again is like the diameter of a dime. So Asian lady beetles are definitely one of the bigger species in general. That said, you can also find Asian lady beetles that are smaller than that, so more the size of a convergent lady beetle, just based on the environmental conditions, food availability, etc., that they were exposed to as they were maturing.
We have another question. In many places, lady beetles are considered good luck. Is that common throughout the world?
That is a really good question. I don't know. I can definitely do a quick Google search and let you know what I find.
I will tell everyone that Julia in the chat has put the link into the Lady Beetle Atlas at Vermont Center for Ecostudies, as well as her own email. I have a suggestion, teacher boy here. You know, you mentioned the invasive species, and I was hoping to see all of those so that we would see what to look for. Is it possible that you can show, you know, you talked about the 12 missing species and 42 species, but I didn't feel like we got to see all of them. Is it possible, or are you just making us go to the go over to the iNaturalist so that we have to do it ourselves?
I can definitely show those. So first of all, my very quick Google search is suggesting that lady beetles are considered very positive in most cultures. So if that Google is correct, then there's your answer. And on that Vermont Atlas of Life webpage, hold on, I'll pull that up and then share my screen again. We have, here we go. We have species profiles. You can see right here on the side, the left-hand side, of all of the lady beetles that have been recorded in the state of Vermont. As far as the introduced ones go, you can see we have status here. The native ones are just blank. And then for the introduced ones, we have I'm just going to open these tabs and then I can flip through them quickly. There we go. Okay, so we have the 7-spotted lady beetle, which is also a very classic looking lady beetle. You can see that the head and pronotum, again, that's this middle section here, are overall black with 2 white dots on the head, and then this is called the anterolateral angle. That is white, kind of vaguely trapezoidal in shape on the pronotum, and then the wing covers or electra are red with, in total, 7 black spots. You have 3 per wing and then this central spot. It is important to note that most lady beetles vary between individuals in the number of spots that they have. So you can't always definitively decide on the species just based on the spots. This is another non-native species we have. It looks a lot like the convergent lady beetle. This one's called the variegated lady beetle, and it's slight differences both in the pattern on the pronotum and head, as well as it has this very distinctive circular pattern of spots typically that helps to differentiate it from the convergent lady beetle. But you have all of this information for each of these species that can help you learn more, learn where you'll find it. You can go to the iNaturalist pages of species that are commonly misidentified as variegated lady beetles. This is for all of the species, have all this information, along with this interactive map as to where they have been recorded. This is another one of our non-native species, the 14-spotted lady beetle. They kind of have, it depends on the individual. Sometimes these spots are all connected, so it looks like a checkered board on the back, but it, in general, will have very rectangular shaped spots. Here's the classic Asian lady beetle. The pronotum is typically white with this black M shape on it, but one thing to note here is the color of the wing covers vary a bit, and you can see that sometimes it's very classic with a bunch of black spots, whereas other times they're essentially spotless. So just because a large red beetle doesn't have spots, that does not mean that it is not the Asian lady beetle. Really look for this M shape on the pronotum. That's usually a good tell that it is in fact an Asian lady beetle. This is another one, the Mexican bean beetle. This is actually native to North America, but was found primarily in, as the name suggests, Mexico through the southwestern states, but inadvertently was introduced to New England. This is a weird lady beetle because they actually feed directly on plants as opposed to eating aphids. So you'll get these, you can kind of see it here, these like chew marks in your plants. They really like squash plants and plants within the squash family. So if you see holes on those plants, keep your eyes out and see if it's Mexican bean beetles. We also have 11-spotted lady beetles. They look super similar to the 7-spotted, which was the first non-native species I went over, but they have 5 spots per wing cover instead of 3, with again that one central spot in the middle. This one actually hasn't been seen in roughly 50 years in Vermont. For some reason, they like became established and now have been in decline. So definitely keep your eyes out for that one, even though it is not native. And then our final non-native species that's been recorded is the pine dusky lady beetle. This one is tiny. It's up to 2 millimeters in length and is primarily associated with conifer trees, mostly pine trees, as the name suggests. This one definitely is not, both due to the fact that it likes pine foliage and because it's small, is not a particularly easy one to find. But yeah, it theoretically is possible, I guess, because they do move around a lot.
Well, that brings up the last question that we have is kind of a more traditional question about seeing all these. Is there a field guide paper, I guess, to lady beetles?
So not that well, there is one. It is not really a field guide, but it is, I will have to, for whoever had that question, definitely email me. I'll have to pull up what the name is, but it's by this guy named Gordon. You could probably, actually, I can probably Google it. That is really the only like kind of comprehensive, I have it as a PDF on my computer that I found. Everything else that I've come across as I've been kind of searching are websites that are sort of like the Vermont Atlas of Life, Lady Beetle Atlas. Bug Guide is a really good source for identifying them, but I have not found just like, you know, an actual book that has all of the lady beetles, either of Vermont or the United States or anything like that. It's like many beetles and insects. They're just not super well researched.
Julia, I have a suggestion for you and for Vermont Center for Ecostudies. I usually winter in Florida, and I'm a member of the Sarasota Audubon. And for the last 4 years, I've taught a class on how to use eBird's mobile app, especially for people who don't know it. It seems to me that it might be really interesting to have a class. It could be through Zoom, but really to teach people how to use iNaturalist with somebody guiding them. I think that would be quite popular.
So you see, funny you should mention that, because I do these weekly webinars called Lunchtime Learning.
I swear she didn't put me up to this, folks.
Which is directly, each week I do a different iNaturalist component, and I go over one fun phenology occurrence that's happening in Vermont in that like either week or more accurately time of year. And then all of them are recorded and can be found on Vermont Center for Ecostudies Vimeo site, which I will put that link in the chat. And you can just go to the events page either on the Vermont Center for Ecostudies main site or the Vermont Atlas of Life site. And you'll see something to sign up for my lunchtime learning if that is of interest. Also, the Lady Beetle Guide, it was published in January of 1985, Journal of New York Entomological Society, and it is by Gordon. Called, here, I'll type it into the chat. It's the Coccinellidae of America north of Mexico. That's like the most comprehensive lady beetle thing that I have.
While you are doing that, it is 7:26. For all of those who have attended tonight, I would like to thank you. We do have a presentation coming up in about a week or so. It's Mav Kim, who is finishing the 4th part of her series for new birders. You can check that on our Green Mountain Audubon website. Julia, I want to thank you. I learned a lot about lady beetles. I'm going to defer now to the president of Green Mountain Audubon Society, who indeed will thank you himself. Thank you very much.
Yes, I want to thank you, Tom, first for doing a great job of facilitating as usual. And Julia, I loved your knowledge and enthusiasm for the subject, and I'm going to go out and photograph some lady beetles when I see them. So thanks for the inspiration. I'd like to thank everybody for attending tonight. Hopefully you didn't have too much of a hassle with our challenges with the website. Yeah, thanks again, Julia. Everybody stay safe.
And also, folks, if you have a friend who would like to see this program, within 24 hours, no more than 48 hours, our young 20-year-old communications chair is going to make this available on our website. So you can send somebody to our website and they can see this program, which will be edited. Julia, you knocked it out of the park.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for attending. Definitely, again, my email is in the chat. Grab that and feel free to email me if you want more information or need help with iNaturalist.
And with that, I wish you all a good non-April Fools tomorrow. And let's hope that the snow ends and the nature observations begin. Good night, everybody. Thank you for attending.
Bye-bye.
Bye.